Jay Leno's Garage. The vehicle we're featuring today is one of my own. It's a 1929 Scott Flying Squirrel, one of the most unusual and innovative motorcycles of all time. I really enjoy this bike. I've had it for quite a while. The Scott was a two-stroke motorcycle back before there really were two-stroke motorcycles. He didn't invent the two-stroke motorcycle, but it's certainly on the forefront, and it goes back to the early 1900s. The Flying Squirrel didn't come around until 1926. This is called a replica TT model because in 1929, Scott came in third at the Isle of Man, and they got so much publicity and so much credit that they decided to build a replica to that winning bike, and this was essentially a race bike for the street. Now nowadays, two-strokes are usually, at least in my day, cheaper than four-stroke motorcycles. But back then, this cost about twice what a four-stroke motorcycle cost back in the day. And most motorcycles were air-cooled. This is a water-cooled motorcycle. Look at this beautiful radiator. Look at the workmanship on this. And it uses something called thermosiphoning. There's no water pump. What happens is, as the engine heats up, the hot water pushes the cold water forward. It goes through the radiator until eventually it's hot water, and it keeps recirculating that way. The water just keeps pushing itself through. And you don't want to sit and idle too long with this because it will overheat. So, but as long as you're moving and air is coming through the radiator, it cools pretty well. You'll notice the barrels are painted red. That's for the racing models, green for the road models. This is about 500 cc's. This is a long-stroke engine. This is the first year of the long-stroke engine. Two-strokes were somewhat of a black art back in the day. There was a lot of experimenting going on. The nice thing about it is it's very easy to start. You know, bikes back in that period, especially the big twins and the big singles, God, you just had to keep kicking them and kicking them. This one, you just drop your foot because of essentially lack of compression, and they just start right up. It's got a 3-speed transmission. It's pretty sophisticated. You put your gas here, put your oil here. Always good to put a little two-stroke oil in the gas just to keep this thing lubricated. You've got a Pilgrim pump on this side. Some interesting features, if you look, they have this on both sides. You see this here? This essentially holds that in. This is so you can get to the bottom end of the motor. You just unbolt that and this door opens, and there's another on this side. So you have easy access to the engine. These were eminently rebuildable. You know, they would carbon up and you'd take it home and decarbonize it, and simple as that, and then you were ready to ride again. There's no headlight, obviously, because it was a race bike, and back in the day, you could put a race bike on the road. There were no such things as turn signals and all the other stuff that you have now, these safety features. But they're so much fun to ride because it feels like, well, it feels like a two-stroke from the 1960s or early 70s when two-strokes were in their heyday here in America. You know, the Suzukis and the Yamahas and the Kawasaki's. I would say this is probably about as fast as a 250 or a 350 Yamaha from the period, even though it's 500 cc's. But it's just so smooth, and it's a complete lack of vibration, and reasonably quiet too as well. There's no real expansion chamber. That didn't come until much later. This is still the early days. The bike was developed by Alfred Angus Scott, who was, I believe, a Scotsman. He died about 1923, I believe. And he's credited, I'm pretty sure, with inventing the Kickstarter, because in the old days you'd put a bike in a stand, you'd pedal it, and then get the wheel spinning, and then, you know, put it in gear, and hopefully it would start, or you'd run and jump on it. And I think the twist grip was his too. I could be wrong on that one, but I know the Kickstarter was his. As I said, being a race bike, it also has a front brake that's pretty effective. You know, most front brakes on motorcycles were not back in the day. What else have we got here? You got your gear shift here, your 3-speed. You've got your gas goes on this side. You see how these clamp down. These, I mean, it's a real high-end bike. You get a little breather there, so you don't pressurize the tank. You've got a steering dampener here. As you see, all kinds of lubrication points along here. single saddle. I think it's a really good looking bike. It's kind of a cool thing. Let's go through the starting process. What can we do here? Let's open this up just to show you. Now, as you see, it's ice cold. I haven't started it. Just to show you how easy these are to start. Now watch, it probably won't start. Okay, let's see what happens. There you go. If you're frightened by the sound of popping popcorn, this will terrify you. But see, not a lot of vibration. And a bit cold-blooded. It takes a while to cool off. Then you have a kill switch right here. What other features have we got here? Well, I'll point out, as you see, this is the serial number is right here. RZ means it's a race replica. RY means it's a touring model, if you ever think of getting one of these. But they're really easy to work on. Certainly much easier than a four-stroke motorcycle with camshafts and valves and all that kind of stuff. You know, you can take this engine apart and put it together. On this side here, you've got, you undo these two bolts and that opens the door, and you can look right into the engine there as well. I don't know what much else there is to talk about. Let's see, there's a Magneto. Let me shut the fuel off for a minute. You have a Magneto here, an advance and retard up here. But you can start it on full advance, unlike most four-stroke motorcycles. This is your rear brake right here. This is your front brake. You just fill your radiator with water, and you're pretty much ready to go. Chain drive, single drum on the rear here, fishtail muffler. As I said before, it does not have the expansion chamber. That came much later, about 50 years later, actually. Bicycle pump is supposed to go here for the tires. I've lost that. It fell off somewhere. I never did manage to retrieve it. I don't know. I guess it's about ready to go for a spin. Well, you'll hear it and you'll see it, which is really kind of cool. So I'm going to start it again. You know, this is the best part. The starting procedure is so simple. Let me get a helmet and we'll take it for a ride. For a bike from the 1920s, the performance is amazing. It only weighs 325 pounds with a full tank of fuel and oil. And in the wintertime, you use the radiator as a heater. You put your hand on there. I like proper hand shift motorcycles because you always know the gear is engaged. You're not constantly kicking with your foot. Once you get in the power band, it's really a lot of fun. No tachometer, don't need one. Just shift by ear. Normally I wouldn't be taking this bike out on a 100-degree day, but it's actually pretty good. It runs fairly cool. That was the problem with early two-strokes. They would overheat, but this water cooling seems to have solved that. I mean, it's a great bike to ride. I actually wish it was a 4-speed, but for almost 100 years old, well, 90 to be exact, pretty good. My mirrors are clear, it's not vibrating like an early twin would. And the thermo-siphoning is the same technique used by the Model T. There was no water pump. The hot water just pushed the cool water forward. Like most two-strokes, there's not much power down low, so you got to sort of get the revs up. Watch, you'll feel it. I'm in third gear now, just holding the throttle, but if it picks up revs, you'll feel You know, as much as I enjoy doing the Lamborghinis, the Pagani's, and all those kind of cars, you know, something like this is a lot of fun. It's fun to learn about something maybe you didn't know about. I mean, I never heard of the Scott Squirrel until I was riding motorcycles for a few years, and then the more I read about it, the more intrigued I got. And it's always fun to go back and study their history that got us where we are today. And this is one of those legendary bikes. You know, it's just a lot of fun to ride. It's kind of cool looking, and it's just a little bit different. So if you learned something, great. I hope you enjoyed this video, and we'll see you guys again next week. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Mm-hmm.